We've all had her for 10 years, and this week, Tuesday, will be my 17th year here. 17 years? Can you imagine? I mean, it's all the new people that applaud. All you old people are like, we had put up with that guy for 17. Yeah, you boys were really little then, weren't you? Some of you weren't born. I mean, it's amazing how many weren't born 17 years ago. So, pretty amazing how God has led and directed and guided. We've been spending the last 3 weeks looking at the book of Ecclesiastes. And if you're new with us today, we're going to give a little very short 30-second clip of the last couple of Sundays what we looked at, because it will help bring you up to where we are today. Ecclesiastes is a book, it's believed written by King Solomon, the son of David and Bathsheba. David, one of the greatest kings for the Jewish nation. Solomon was asked by God when he was just a brand new king, what do you want? In a dream, and Solomon said, I want wisdom to lead your people. God said, you know what? I will give you wisdom, but I will also give you prosperity. I will give you financial. I will give you military. I will give you economically. Everything that a man's heart's desire would be, I'm gonna bless it with all to you. Well, if you study King Solomon's life, and really study if you've been looking at or reading, or if you're new today, I encourage you to go home and read the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is Solomon talking about the fact that to him, life seemed pretty meaningless. Or as the King James Version says, vanity of vanities. It's interesting because here Solomon is the leader of the Jewish people. He is the king. But it's interesting, within the King James and the New King James Version, it calls him the preacher. Not just the king, but the King James Version translates it also as, I, the preacher, am saying this. Totally questioning life, totally questioning the meaning of life. If you really read Ecclesiastes and you look at it just for the surface level, it makes you feel like maybe the king needed to be taking Prozac, because it is such a depressing book. If you read it for the horizontal aspect of what the book is saying, because Solomon is saying that I looked for pleasure, I looked for meaning. Solomon kept saying, I. You can't find it on the horizontal. Solomon says, I had the money, I had the wealth, I had the wine, women, and song. I had everything that there was. I had it all horizontally, and there was no meaning there. Well, today, what do we tend to look for? There's a lot of people look to humanism. And yet humanism, which says humanity, man and women, are the center of everything, we will disappoint each other. It's going to be empty. We look at naturalism, that all can be explained by the natural law, and that reality with that is it's still empty and void. We have skepticism, dedication to human reason, science, and education, and yet where does skepticism leave us? Still questioning, still wondering. Liberalism, which says miracles don't happen. We have people that want to write all the miracles out of the Bible and say there's no way these things could have happened because they go against the natural law. Existentialism believes that the individual experience is the highest regard. And yet again, the existentialism, which takes us back to humanism, which says that men and women are the highest, where does that leave us? No place. Man, I look at my own life and think, man, if I am the highest that there is, it's pretty sad. Solomon's looking on the horizontal. But there's places within the book of Ecclesiastes that he calls us to look at the vertical. Well, what we read in 2 weeks ago, we looked at, fingers were too fast, Hank, go back one, thanks. 2 weeks ago, we looked at chapter 2. Where Solomon says, a man, a woman can do nothing better than to eat and drink, find satisfaction in their work. This too I see is from the hand of God, for without him, who could eat and find enjoyment? The man, the woman who pleases him, pleases God. God will give to them wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. If you take anything out, if you're just here today for the first Sunday, or if you've been here all 3 Sundays, I hope when we're done with this series on Ecclesiastes that you will remember 5 years from now, 10 years, maybe even 17 years from now, if I'm still preaching here, that you will, pretty quiet there for that one, huh? That you will remember Ecclesiastes. Solomon is saying, I'm looking at the horizontal, but we got to look at the vertical. If I keep our eyes on what's going on this plane, it's going to be vanity. It's going to be meaningless. When we look at this plane, our eyes on God, there is meaning in life. And to the man or woman who pleases God, keeps his eyes on the prize, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. 2 weeks ago, last week, we looked at Ecclesiastes 3 about the fullness of time. With the song from the Byrds, turn, 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 to every season, turn, turn, turn. We talked about the fact that we live in chronos time, meaning we have our date of birth, we have our date of death, and then we have that little dash on the gravestone. Meaning we look at our calendars, and I called all of you yesterday on that call 'em all thing. Did most of you get the phone call? Okay, if you didn't get a phone call, give me your number. That way I can put you on the system. Unless you don't want to be on the system and get all the phone calls, but call y'all just to remind you, hey, set your clock early. Go ahead, otherwise you're going to be an hour late for church tomorrow morning. We live on chronos, chronological time. We time people. We have people that are in the Olympics or in any sports that, it gets to the 100th of a second, and you can either win or lose with that 100th of a second. The last week and a half, there's been a lot of moving parts here at Calvary, especially here in the sanctuary. I'd love to have somebody give us like $750,000 to build a sanctuary so this could become what it was originally intended for 20 years ago. But there were so many moving parts the last couple of weeks. Chairs up, chairs down. We had the tea party. We had the clothes closet. We're back to this. We're doing all stuff with tea party. I showed up yesterday morning about 9 o'clock, and earlier in the week, my wife had said to me, honey, some of the carts that are in one of the closets, we want to put wheels on them like you and Scott did for some of the other carts that we got. And honey, we'd like it done by Saturday afternoon. This was like Friday night. Now, not really. It was Thursday, but she just said, I wanted it done by Saturday afternoon. I said, sweetie, there's no way. Well, I show up yesterday for clothes closet, and who do we happen to have? We happen to have 3 wonderful young men that showed up, and also, well, I guess Ray's a young guy too. Yeah, we had 3 wonderful young guys that showed up to work. Man, I looked at that and I said, I got the workers. Okay, what do we need? Measure everything. Okay, I'm going down to the Home Depot. Call Home Depot. Hey, measure. I called Ace. It didn't work out. Go to Home Depot. They had all the boards. I get down to Home Depot. Man, I'm sort of just going a little too fast to get there because I want to get back because we got so much stuff going on, and I'm running on chronos time. You ever have this? You're running on the chronos time? You're running on the clock. I get to Home Depot. Get everything done. Get in line. I had to have a newbie cashier in front of me. I did a lot of breath prayers because he was so slow. And right before I got in line, another lady and her husband got in line, and they had 2 carts full of stuff. And I'm looking at this, and I am just fuming, and I am thinking, God, you gave me these guys to do this work, and here I'm stuck in line. I'm just, ever find yourself in that? You're in a hurry, you're on a rush, you're on the time frame, and about halfway through the 10 minutes that I'm standing in line, it's like God hits me upside the head. Smack! Greg, you just taught on this last week Sunday. This is part of your introduction for tomorrow morning for the Ecclesiastes. What life do we live, or what time, what clock do we live on? We're called not to live on that chronos time, though we have to within our lives do that. But we're called to walk within the kairos, the seasons of life. Get to the counter, and the guy's like, oh, how's your day going? At first I said, well, not really very good because I'm in a really pretty big hurry, and I thought this would go faster. And I'm thinking, oh, great, if he found out I'm a pastor and I'm snipping at him, And then the credit card won't work. Okay, nothing against you deacons. I love you deacons, but the deacons have given me a credit card for church, and I can't tell you how often it's been declined the last 3 weeks. I think already in a month I've been swiping it way too much, and it's just like, pardon? There's my time, that's right. And so it's like, God says, Greg, okay, come on. Live in the Kairos time. Be nice to this kid. Be nice to him. So it caused me to take the step back, do the breath prayer and say, okay, Lord, what's going on? Seasons of life. We live in the chronos. We're called to live also in the kairos. So what do we see within Ecclesiastes? We see that Solomon is saying, I look under the sun, I'm looking horizontal, but when you look vertical is when you have meaning in life. So we have the end of it all. If you have your own Bibles, I encourage you to open them up to Ecclesiastes 3. Ecclesiastes 3. Also, we put stuff on YouVersion, but I just remembered I forgot to put it on this week. But YouVersion is the Bible app. I encourage you to put it on your smartphones, whatnot. It's called YouVersion. Solomon says at the end of the writing of his book, now all has been heard, and here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. This is the whole duty of man, the whole duty of women. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. What I want us to look at or focus on for just a short time is those two thoughts. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments. You know, scripturally, it talks often about fear. It says in the book of Proverbs, it says, fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is, my brain just went dead there for a second. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Well, when you and I think about the word fear, what images are conjured up in your brain, in your mind? I mean, is it the image of the fear that you might have of doing something wrong, of being pulled over by the police officer? Is it the fear that you might have of being caught in school by the teacher and you're actually cheating on a test and being sent to the principal's office? Is it the fear that maybe you have that you know your mom says to you, hey, wait till your father gets home? That type of fear? Fear. I mean, just that word fear, what does that conjure up in your mind? Does that conjure up something positive? Or is it more negative? Like, man, if I'm told to fear something, you know, when you're out on a hike and there's the railing and it says, be cautious or cautious here, people fall here, and it causes a fear in your life because you don't want to look over the ledge. That word fear, what does it do to you? Without having you raise your hands and give the answers, just within your own mind, rhetorical question. Is fear negative or positive? Is fear something that draws you closer to somebody else? Or if you think about you are fearful of someone, that it pushes you away? Does fear draw you into a relationship with somebody else? Or does it say, I really don't want to be with that person? Now, I don't know about you, but for me, usually when I hear the word fear, it's like, no, I don't want to be with that person. I fear that person. Nope, I don't want to be because there's an accountability aspect. Nope, I don't. And it sort of is, it's a put-off. Biblically, that's not what's being talked about here with the word fear. Fear God. I can honestly say I had a very healthy fear of my dad, but I had a deep love for Dad. Why did I have the fear of him? Because if I got out of line, there was discipline. So there was the fear of the disappointment, the fear of not doing that which I was called to do. Back in the 70s, when we were living here in Kalamazoo, I went to K Christian. I went to a lot of rock concerts at Wink Stadium. Three Dog Night and the Doobie Brothers. I mean, there were a lot of fantastic 70 rock groups there. And my old man would always say to me, you know, Greg, you can go. I know I've said this before, but Greg, you can go. And some of you I know went at that time because you've told me you also went, and there was a lot of marijuana going on and other drugs going on. And my dad would always say, you can go. I trust you there. But just know that if the Lord comes back right then and there, would he be pleased with what you might be doing when you're there? Okay, Dad. That fear of my dad and fear of God kept me from doing those things that I shouldn't have been doing, of the marijuana and the other things. It was a healthy fear. So I saw at that point, fear is good. It can help in the relationship with a parent. It can help in the relationship with God. So Ecclesiastes here, Solomon says, fear God. Well, I want to just break up the word fear, just as an acronym this morning. Fear. We're called to have faith in God's existence. Faith in God's existence. Regretfully, today, we have a society, we are living in the American society, which is, percentage-wise, is really starting to question even more than ever before the existence of God. We have this whole push between church and state. We have this, I think it's called the Freedom of Religion group, of the guy that leads it used to be a pastor who is now pushing back against anything that's faith-filled within the public arena. We have, it was way back in the 60s when Time magazine had the headline, God is dead. And there's a lot of people that question that today. But the reality is to understand that we are called to first fear God is to understand that we have faith in God's existence. The book of Hebrews says to us, anyone who wants to approach God must believe that both he exists and that he cares enough to respond to those who seek him. I always find it interesting when a non-Christian will get upset at Christians because of God. Because why would you get upset at somebody if you don't believe anything of what they believe in? You follow me with that? So if somebody is an atheist and says, we don't believe in God, why would they get upset if I pray to God? If they don't believe in God, why get upset about God? You follow me with that? And I heard it was like 15 years ago, somebody on the radio, an atheist from California, talk show, and he brought that point up. He said, I'm an atheist, and I don't care wherever I'm at, if I'm at school, wherever I'm at, if people get together and pray, he goes, I just veg out because I don't believe that God exists, so it doesn't bug me. He goes, those who get upset about it sort of are believing something, but they don't want to believe it, so they're mad. Fear God. Fear God means, first off, that we need to have faith in God's existence. And with this idea of faith in God's existence, I think who better than to question God? Some people sit back, some Christians, pious maybe, some of us at times have been that pious Christians that you can never question God. Don't argue with God. Don't question what God's doing in your life. I say, why not? When we're growing up, who's the best one to question? Mom and Dad. Why? Because Mom and Dad are still going to love you. If you got kids, don't you want your kids to bring the questions to you and say, hey, what about this? What about that? I don't agree with this, or I don't. And so as a parent, you can teach and train and discipline and mold. We are called to, within our fearing God, to have faith in God's existence. We're also called to experience his grace. Jesus says something interesting when he says, those who have been forgiven little love little. Those who have been forgiven a lot love a lot. Forgiven little, love little. Forgiven a lot, love a lot. The reality is, all of us, myself included, have been forgiven a lot. The truth is, a lot of us don't understand how deep and the depth of our sin is to God. I don't care if you are the murderer who's sitting on death row. I don't care if you're Samuel Steele, who I was the foreman for the trial a couple of years ago, who's sitting in jail for life for murder and drugs. Or if you're sitting in here this morning and you've never done anything like that in your life. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. To God, one sin is like the other. God doesn't weigh our sin out. The depth of my sin is as deep as anybody that's sitting in jail. But have I experienced His grace? Do I understand that depth to experience the grace and the depth of the love that He has for us? The song that we sang, grace flows down. Grace covers me and you. John 8 says, Then Jesus says to the woman who was caught in adultery, when all the other religious leaders who had picked up stones to throw at the woman, and when Jesus says to them, hey, who's without the first sin, go ahead and throw the first stone. And it says that from the oldest to the youngest, they left the woman and Jesus. And Jesus says to the woman, they're not condemning you, neither do I. But go and sin no more. Huh. We forget that part. There's a wonderful song, a top song that's out right now. It's called Grace. Grace Wins. I think that's the name of it, Grace Wins. It's on contemporary radio stations. I love that song, but that song does part of it, but it doesn't tell the whole story. Jesus says to the woman, I don't condemn you. Jesus says to you and I, as we fear God, as we walk in that fear, that relationship with Jesus Christ, Jesus says, you know what? You know what, Greg? I forgive you. We like to stop there. But then he adds the next part, go and sin no more. We want to say, you know what? We want that forgiveness so that we can do it again and again and ask for forgiveness and do it again. Ask for forgiveness, do it again, ask for forgiveness. That circle that we get in, that cycle we get in. But Jesus says, okay, I give you grace. But strive to go and sin no more. We're called to experience the grace of God. Faith in God's existence, experiencing His grace. Also, all at His majesty. Now today with our everything's internet fast, we can look on our phones even here and you can watch videos about how big the universe is and how small and get into our bodies. And some of you may recall though, if you're older like me, back in the 60s and 70s you went to Travelogues. Anybody remember going to Travelogues? Thank you. A few of you are honest, remember that. You know, you go to the local school, the high school, and you got this person that has gone to Alaska, and they have a slideshow. And you sit there for an hour and a half watching this slideshow. It's like, oh, look at the beauty. Now we got it all on our TVs and everything. And I think the more that we have it at our fingertips, the less in awe, I can say for me, the more I have it at my fingertips, the less I am in awe of nature and the fact of what God has created. Job says to us, then the Lord answered Job out of the storm and said, where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know, Job. Who stretched the measuring line across it? And what were its footing set? Or who laid the cornerstone? Who shut up the seas behind the doors when it burst forth from the womb? Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place? And God goes on speaking to Job, about God saying, look at nature. Nature screams for my existence. Nature calls out for the existence of God. So Solomon says to us, fear God. Walk in faith in God's existence. Walk in the experience of His grace. Be in awe of His majesty. But also, fear, resolve. Resolve to keep His commandments. The woman caught in adultery. I forgive you, but go and sin no more. Now, did she walk away and never sin in her life again? She still sinned. Because we're born in sin. It's going to take place. But when we willfully choose to do that which we know is wrong. You know, I always find it interesting when we say, that's just the way God made me. That's a doggone excuse. I can't get up and do that because that's just the way God made me. I think you're choosing not to. There are things that I choose not to do. Not because that's the way God made me, but I choose not to do it. When you and I sit back and say, well, we can't do this in the church, we can't do this for God, we can't share our faith, we can't teach, we can't pray, we can't. We're not saying that we can't do it. What we're saying is we don't want to do it. We refuse to do it. What is Jesus here saying, or really what is Solomon saying to us? To resolve to keep his commandments. It is a choice that we make. You with me on that? You with me on that? Yeah. I'm warm in here. I don't know if you're warm. It's like, don't want to put you all to sleep. So it is a choice that we make. The woman could have walked away and said, you know what? I got caught. I got forgiven. I'm doing it again. Or she'd walk away and say, you know what? I got caught. I'm forgiven. And I resolve to not do it again. A choice. Fear God. Faith in his existence. Experience his grace. Awe at the majesty. Resolve to keep his commandments. Love the Lord your God. When Jesus asked the whole question of, what's the summary of the law, and I'm sure a lot of you hopefully were thinking in your brain before this passage popped up, oh, somebody else said something about this. Fear God, follow his commands. Jesus says, love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And your neighbor, the second is like this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these two. What is our theme of church? Hearts up to God, hands out to others. Say that with me. Hearts up to God, hands out to others. Okay, one more time. That was pretty quiet. Hearts up to God, hands out to others. Where do we get that from? Right here. Love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength. The second is like to it. Love your neighbor as yourself. See, the reality is within our life, living life vertically gives meaning to our horizontal. When my life has our eyes focused on the Lord, when it has our hearts focused on that relationship with Jesus Christ, it gives meaning to whatever is going on. Yesterday, when I'm standing in the Home Depot line and the Lord smacks me upside the head, it's like, you know what? Greg, come on. You're living life horizontally. You got to live it vertically. Even here at Home Depot in the line, because here's a young kid that if you say you're a pastor and you're doing this for church and then you're snipping at him, what is that going to say to him about that vertical? I know he's not thinking about that vertical, but what's that going to say to him about a relationship with God? Man, why do I want a relationship with God when I got a pastor who's snipping at me? He can't live it out. Why would I want that? That Kairos time within our life, God gives us so many opportunities at our work, at our play, at our leisure, to be giving God the glory and the praise. Living life vertically gives meaning to life horizontally. Micah 6 says, and what does God require of you? To act justly, love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Read that one when you get home too. If you got a pen, write it down or remember it. Micah 6:8. What does God want of us? Act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. Fear God. Follow his commands. Have faith in his existence. Experience his grace. Have an awe at his majesty and resolve to follow him because we are called to fear God and keep his commandments. This is the whole duty of man, of women. You think about it, we think life gets so confusing. We think we got to have these jobs, we got to have these goods, we got to have these possessions, we got to do all these things in our life. Life gets summed up right here. Fear God and keep his commandments. And Jesus says, when you seek first the kingdom of God, all the other things will fall into place in your life. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Lord, this morning as we have sung our songs of praise, Lord, as we have given our gifts of offering to you. Lord, as we have heard your word proclaimed, Lord, we seek to leave this place with a newness within our heart, with a resolve within our lives to follow you, to fear you, to have faith in your existence, to experience your grace, to awe at your majesty, to resolve to follow you, O Lord, all the days of our life. We ask this all in your name. Amen. Please rise for the prayer blessing.